What if I told you that Old Bay, the yellow tin with the blue and red label that is in every Maryland kitchen and on every Maryland crab, was invented by a man who had been imprisoned in Buchenwald concentration camp 2 weeks before he arrived in Baltimore? That McCormick, the world's largest spice company, fired him after 3 days because he was Jewish, and that he went home, opened his own spice company, and built an empire across the street from the wholesale fish market? That the official state dessert of Maryland is a cake made on an island with no bridge that nobody outside Maryland has heard of, built from 10 paper-thin layers of yellow cake separated by chocolate frosting? On the night of November 9th, 1938, Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, violent mobs across Nazi Germany burned Jewish businesses, synagogues, and homes. The Nazis arrested 30,000 Jewish men and sent them to concentration camps. Among those arrested was Gustav Brunn, a spice merchant from Frankfurt who had been trying for over a year to get his family out of Germany. Brunn spent 2 weeks in Buchenwald. His wife Bianca paid a Frankfurt lawyer more than $80,000 in today's money to bribe the Gestapo for his release. Within a week of his release, the family was on a ship to America. They arrived in Baltimore on December 28, 1938. After 9 months of struggle to find steady employment, Brunn started the Baltimore Spice Company in 1939. Old Bay made its debut in 1941. Among the few possessions they brought from Germany was his hand-crank spice grinder, rewired to work with American electrical current. Brunn struggled to find work in Baltimore and finally landed a job at McCormick and Company, the world's biggest spice maker. According to the Baltimore Sun, Brunn's son Ralph recalls that after only a few days, McCormick learned that Brunn was Jewish and fired him, directing him to go and see the Jewish charities. The Jewish community of Baltimore stepped in. Meyer Strauss, a philanthropist who was helping Jewish refugees find work, encouraged Brunn to open his own shop. He opened a store at 26 Marketplace, across the street from the wholesale fish market. A friend from the Jewish community worked in advertising and suggested something catchier. They used the name of a local steamship line, Old Bay. At first, area seafood merchants were reluctant to try the new spice blend, sure that their own was the best. But one day, he convinced a seafood wholesaler on Water Street to take a sample. And this man's business increased with it, Brunn told the interviewer in 1980. You see, they liked it. When he sold his crabs, they liked it a whole lot better than the others. So I got one customer after another. The Chesapeake Bay blue crab, Calanectus sapidus, literally beautiful savory swimmer, is Maryland's most important food and Maryland's most important argument. The argument is about how to eat it. The blue crab is steamed, always steamed, not boiled. In a pot with beer and Old Bay, layered in the pot with more Old Bay between the layers until the shells turn red and the meat inside is cooked through. The crabs are dumped onto a table covered in brown paper. Everyone at the table has a wooden mallet and a knife. The work begins. A Maryland crab feast is not a meal. It is an event. You sit at the table for 2, 3, 4 hours. You crack, you pick, you eat. The most prized part is the back fin, the large lump of white meat in the back of the crab, and the claw meat, which requires the most work to extract and rewards that work with the sweetest, cleanest flavor. The mustard, the bright yellow hepatopancreas inside the shell, is eaten by true believers and avoided by the uninitiated. A Maryland crab cake requires one thing above all others: crab. More crab than anything else. The crab cake that uses breadcrumbs as a structural material that dilutes the crab with filler until the crab is secondary is not a Maryland crab cake. It is a crab-flavored breadcrumb cake. A proper Maryland crab cake is lump blue crab meat, backfin or jumbo lump, the most premium grades, held together with the minimum possible amount of binder. Egg, mayonnaise, a little Dijon mustard, Old Bay, Worcestershire, and just enough breadcrumb to keep it from falling apart. The ratio should be approximately 90% crab to 10% everything else. The cake is broiled or pan-fried until the outside is golden and the inside is barely set. The Maryland crab cake debate, broiled or fried, jumbo lump or backfin, how much filler is acceptable, what sauces are appropriate, is a debate that Marylanders conduct with the same intensity that Cincinnatians debate chili. The correct answers are broiled, jumbo lump, as little filler as possible, and Old Bay remoulade or nothing at all. Smith Island sits in the Chesapeake Bay, 12 miles from the mainland, accessible only by boat. Population approximately 200. No bridge. No chain restaurants. No traffic lights. The island has been inhabited since the 17th century and has maintained its own dialect, a form of English with roots in the Elizabethan speech patterns of the original settlers, and its own cake. The Smith Island cake is the official state dessert of Maryland. It is made from 8 to 10 layers of thin yellow cake, each layer baked separately, each no thicker than a quarter inch, separated by cooked chocolate frosting. The assembled cake is approximately 4 inches tall, with more frosting layers than most cakes have total layers. Sliced, it looks like a cross-section of geological strata. The cake originated on Smith Island as a harvest tradition. Women would bake the cakes to send with their husbands during the fall oyster season. The thin layers stayed moist longer than a standard cake. The chocolate frosting helped preserve it during the weeks at sea. Each family on the island had its own recipe. The number of layers was a matter of competition and pride. Baltimore has a sandwich that exists almost nowhere else, and that visitors encounter with confusion before eating it with enthusiasm. Pit beef is a cut of top round beef, not brisket, not a smoked cut, not a slow-cooked braised cut. Seared directly over charcoal on an open pit, cooked to medium rare, sliced thin with an electric knife, and piled on a Kaiser roll with raw onion and tiger sauce. Tiger sauce is a Baltimore-specific condiment. Prepared horseradish mixed with mayonnaise or sour cream, with enough horseradish to make the name appropriate. The pit is the key. Pit beef is not barbecue in the southern sense. It is not smoked low and slow for hours. It is seared over direct charcoal heat, high and fast, until the outside develops a char crust and the inside remains pink. The result is a sandwich that is simultaneously like a roast beef sandwich, and unlike any roast beef sandwich you have eaten. The char on the outside, the rare interior, the aggressive horseradish, the raw onion. Chap's Pit Beef on Pulaski Highway in Baltimore, a converted trailer operation in a parking lot, has been serving pit beef since the 1980s and has been called by multiple food writers the best beef sandwich in America. The restaurant is open until 4 a.m. on weekends. The parking lot fills. The beef keeps going. In 1835, a German immigrant named Henry Berger opened a bakery in Baltimore. The bakery made many things. One thing has outlasted all the others. A Berger cookie is a soft vanilla drop cookie, small, barely sweet, slightly cakey, topped with a layer of chocolate fudge frosting that is thicker than the cookie beneath it. The frosting is the point. The cookie is the vehicle. The ratio of frosting to cookie is approximately 2 to 1, which is by design, which is why the Berger cookie tastes unlike any other cookie in America. The De Beaufort Bakery purchased the Berger cookie recipe from the Berger family in 1945 and has been making them in Baltimore ever since. They are sold in bags at every Baltimore grocery store, gas station, and diner. They appear at every Baltimore tailgate, every Baltimore birthday party, every office kitchen in the city. They are not sold in most of the country. People from Baltimore who move away have them shipped. The cookie with more frosting than cookie has been a Baltimore institution for 190 years without requiring external validation. Maryland has 2 crab soups and a clear opinion about which is better. Maryland crab soup is a vegetable beef soup. Tomato-based broth, lima beans, corn, potatoes, carrots, celery, onion, Old Bay, with blue crab claws and claw meat stirred in at the end. It is a working soup. Thick, filling, deeply flavored with the Old Bay and the crab and the long-cooked vegetables. It is the soup you make in the fall when the crabs are running and the weather turns. The other crab soup is cream of crab, a bisque of cream, sherry, crab meat, and Old Bay, served with a float of sherry on top. It is richer, more delicate, more restaurant-oriented. Maryland takes both seriously and argues about which is the state's true soup. The cream of crab people believe in refinement. The Maryland crab soup people believe in volume and vegetable content. Both are correct in their own way. Both require Old Bay. This is non-negotiable. Before the blue crab, there were oysters. The Chesapeake Bay oyster was once the most abundant shellfish in the world. Reefs of oysters rising from the bay floor, filtering the water, feeding the ecosystem, providing the foundation for the most productive fishery on the East Coast. The oyster industry of the Chesapeake Bay made Baltimore one of the most important food processing cities in America in the 19th century. Oyster canneries lined the harbor. The skipjacks, the traditional oyster dredging sailboats that are the state boat of Maryland, worked the bay through the winter, dragging dredges across the oyster bars that had been there for millennia. The oyster population collapsed through the 20th century. Overharvesting, disease, and pollution reduced the bay's oyster population to a fraction of its historic abundance. The revival has been slow and ongoing. Maryland oyster farmers now grow oysters on floating cages throughout the bay, producing a product that carries the specific flavor of the water where it was raised. Salty, clean, mineral, with a sweetness that reflects the particular mix of salt and fresh water at each location. Baltimore has a summer food that exists under the same name in other cities, but is a fundamentally different product. A Baltimore snowball is shaved ice, not crushed ice, not chipped ice, but ice shaved with a machine into a texture so fine it is almost powdery, packed into a cup, saturated with flavored syrup, and finished with a marshmallow cream topping. The marshmallow cream, sweet, white, sticky, sinks into the snowball as you eat it and changes the texture of the ice around it. It is the detail that makes a Baltimore snowball different from every other shaved ice product in the country. The snowball stands of Baltimore open in spring and close in fall. They appear in parking lots, on street corners, at the edges of parks. The flavor selection is vast: egg custard, wedding cake, sky blue, black cherry, cantaloupe, with the marshmallow cream available on any flavor. Regulars have their combinations. The combinations are personal and not subject to outside advice. Maryland is a state that built its food identity around a bay and a spice blend, and an argument about how to eat a crab. The old bay that goes on every Maryland crab was invented by a man who arrived with a spice grinder and a concentration camp survivor's determination. McCormick fired him in 3 days. He went home and built an empire. The recipe he developed in 1941 has never changed. Maryland puts it on crabs and French fries and popcorn and potato chips and deviled eggs and anything else that holds still long enough. The Smith Island cake requires taking a boat to an island with no bridge to eat it correctly. The pit beef is served from a trailer in a parking lot until 4 a.m. because Baltimore eats on its own schedule. The Berger cookie has more frosting than cookie because that is the correct ratio and has been since 1835. Not every state's most famous spice blend was created by a Holocaust survivor who was fired from McCormick for being Jewish. Not every state's official dessert is made on an island accessible only by boat. Not every state's most beloved sandwich is served from a converted trailer in a parking lot at 3 a.m. Maryland does things its own way. Has since the first watermen pulled blue crabs from the Chesapeake and put them on a table covered in brown paper with a wooden mallet and figured out the rest from there.